Hello, this is Raymond with the next teaser video for King Dolphin TV. I have a treat for you. For our big debut live stream, we'll be planning a special reading of a chapter of All's Fair. This will be read by a special guest. I am really excited about this. In the meantime, to wet your whistle, I am going to read a portion of the prologue to All's Fair. Come on, sit back and have a cup of joe as you enjoy Dolphin Wars, All's Fair by Raymond Feliciano. It was a good time for the people of Earth. After dealing with the horrors of a Third World War, overpopulation, and resource depletion, humans developed technology to take them into space. They formed the first colonies in 2050 on the Moon and Mars. However, the problems that caused conflict on Earth simply migrated to the colonies. In order to keep peace in the colonies, the United Earth government organized the Space Defense Force. Despite this, tensions between Earth and the Martian colonies continued until they flared and became the brief but violent conflict of Martian independence in the early part of the 22nd century. It was July 8th, 2136, and while in the officers' crew quarters of the escort carrier Gregory Pappy Boynton, the alarm buzzed loudly until a man's hand knocked it onto the floor. After it crashed on the floor, a soft female voice with a Mediterranean accent said, "Real mature, Lieutenant Ando." Lieutenant Tran Ando rose from the bed and said, "Sorry, Lieutenant Levy, but you know I hate alarms." He rose from his rack and said, "You know, it's times like this that I miss fishing with Grandpa in the South China Sea." He looked down at the woman just rising from his bed. She looked fit and athletic. Her tan skin only had one mark, a small birthmark in the shape of a dolphin on her back between her shoulder blades. Tran always thought it looked sexy. "So, Tanya, who did you buy off not to fly this mission?" "Pah, you know darn well why. Captain Dickhead just had to have the best pilot on his road to glory." Tanya turned and rose from the bed and walked around in her nightshirt. She walked over and kissed Tran on his back. "I really wish I could fly with you, but he stuffed me away at Pryfly and the CIC today." Pryfly was responsible for controlling the carrier's flight operations, and the Combat Information Center handled the strike operation. "I knew he would succeed in breaking up the best team in the wing. I really have a bad feeling about this op." "Yes, and you've told me that 10 times before. I also have a feeling of impending doom. But we do our duty, Lieutenant Ando. I really have to go now. I gotta get to the ready room and set up now before I go to Pryfly." She got up and kissed him and jumped into her sweats. "Hey, wait, I want to say something." But she already left the cabin. Tran Ando and Lieutenant Junior Grade Tanya Levy were both flyers in the 103rd Fighter Squadron assigned to Carrier Fighter Wing 116 on board the space carrier Pappy Boynton, flagship of Carrier Battle Group 1. It consisted of the Boynton, Carrier Strike Wing 42, and 3 destroyer escorts. The battle group was in orbit around Mars as part of its support role for the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. It was the UEG Defense Command's desire to end the war as soon as possible before public opinion on Earth went against the conflict. Operation Brightwing was planned to defeat the Martian insurgents. The task force consisted of Carrier Battle Group 1, the assault ship Iwo Jima, and 5 support cruisers. The best pilot was indeed Tran Nguyen Ando. Born in Hanoi in 2110 to Nguyen Ando, one of the richest men on the planet, and his late wife Irena Katrina. His father was the owner of East Wind Shipping Company and the descendant of Vietnam's greatest general, Vo Nguyen Giap. East Wind Shipping was a diverse company consisting of a fleet of fishing trawlers, cruise ships, tankers, and heavy lift vessels. East Wind vessels could be seen everywhere around the oceans of the world. They had ports in every port city worldwide, with the headquarters in Haiphong, Vietnam. The Ando family had a sprawling estate located in Da Nang on Hon La Island, a few miles off of the mainland, that kept them secluded from outsiders. Tran's mother was a beautiful Jewish Ukrainian woman from Odessa. He inherited his mother's striking blonde hair and his father's Vietnamese eyes and features. He was 6 feet tall and had a fit swimmer's physique and muscles honed by life on the sea. His memories were of her doting on him and inspiring him to be the very best. When he was a teenager, she was mauled by sharks while boating with his father. His father was maimed trying to save her, and her death haunted him all his life. Tran was raised with the love of sea and exploration, and kept it up despite his mother's tragic death. He was an accomplished scuba and deep-sea diver. However, his desires were elsewhere. Whenever he sailed in his father's ships and looked at the stars at night, he knew he wanted to be up there exploring their beauty and majesty. Tran originally wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, so he worked diligently to learn that craft. He started at the age of 12 on the decks of the fishing trawlers, hauling fish on board, and then he progressed as a deckhand on the cruise ships and worked in the engineering spaces with the Black Gang. At the age of 17, just before he went into the Space Defense Force Naval Academy, he earned his shipmaster, any ocean, any tonnage rating. Finally, he entered the academy in 2127. At first, he wanted to be a ship driver to follow in his father's steps, but life had a way of changing things. After he did a cadet tour of a Space Defense Force fighter base and had a flight in one of the older space fighters, he wanted to be an aviator, so transferred to the Flight Academy. He graduated 10th out of 1,500 in the class of 2131 and went to flight school. During undergraduate pilot training, he impressed his instructors with his natural flying ability, and he graduated first in his class. He spent the next 3 years learning all he could about being in fighter combat and found that no one could never know too much about it. Tran became an instructor and flight lead in his squadron. And then he went to fighter weapons school to become an expert in aerial combat and tactics. It's when he graduated from the school and returned to his squadron to be the weapons and tactics officer that the first shots of the so-called Martian War of Independence were fired. A group of miners rebelled against the government, and they claimed that the UEG was exploiting them and their planet's resources. It soon escalated into a full-fledged armed conflict in which they used a combination of stolen equipment and old material to fight their wars successfully. Ando's wing was put on an escort carrier and sent to combat around Mars in 2136. After he flew combat missions, he knew that his life and training brought him to this point. He became familiar with the pain of loss when, after hard combat missions, he would return to empty seats in the squadron ready room. This only steeled his resolve. He also let someone into his personal life. That someone was Lieutenant J.G. Tanya Levy, a replacement in his flight. Tanya Ariana Levy was born in a kibbutz just outside of Tel Aviv, Israel. Her father was the head of a shipping in Israel and was a good friend of Luann Ando, who also had a shipping operation at Haifa. She was intelligent, athletic, and with her striking looks, never had a shortage of suitors. She was 2 years older than Tran, and the first time the two of them met was memorable for both of them. They met at a reception for Tran's parents at Jerusalem when she was 16, and as he remembered that time, it went badly for him. Tran entered the ballroom and looked at the young woman. He said haughtily, "So, Levy, it's been a long time. Ah, Ando, still the little boy. I remember your bar mitzvah. What do you mean, little boy? I'm smarter, richer, and better than you. I saw your bat mitzvah, and I did so much better than you. Yeah, you think you have to be one up on me. You'll never be better. Pah! I know I'm better. He looked smugly, and during the party, he continued to behave like he was God's gift to everyone. Tanya had enough of his arrogance and punched him in front of everyone. Everyone who saw this was mortified that she would be so bold as to humiliate the son of a rich and famous personage such as Nguyen Ando. Nguyen, however, laughed and said, "You know, my son, you did deserve that. Always remember this and be careful of women." Her father said, "Nguyen, my friend, this could be the start of a beautiful relationship." As he was gently chastised by both of them, he seethed and swore he would get back with her. They hadn't seen each other since. Tanya worked with her father on various tasks and pursued her degree in chemical engineering at MIT. She had no desire to enter the Space Defense Force at first, but when she was 25, when she decided to get her commission and enter flight school. She graduated from her Dragon qualification training when she received her orders to join the UES Pappy Boyington carrier battle group to fight in the war. When she arrived there, she was shocked when she entered the ready room and saw the bane of her youth, Tran Ando. He looked at her in an amusement and said, well, Lieutenant, I knew I'd eventually get a chance to pay you back." She put her hands on her hips and scowled. "What do you mean, Lieutenant? You deserved everything I gave you." "Oh, I see that bruise healed nicely. I should have hit you harder." "I probably did deserve it, Lieutenant Levy, but now, after all those years of torment, I get to pay you back. You see, you are my wingman." He snapped a picture at her shocked and discouraged look before she could react. The picture ended up in his berth for him to look at times to cheer him up. Tran found that not much had changed from when they were younger. She was opinionated, she had her own ways of flying and fighting, and now had an arrogant streak. Even though she was a natural pilot, he often had to rein her in. Eventually, they got into a rhythm, and they became one of the best combat teams in the squadron. They were in sync, often without speaking to each other. In the squadron ready room, when Ando started a sentence, Levy often finished it. It was only natural that their work relationship ended up as a romantic one. She was in love with Ando when she saw him again, and Ando was in love with her from the first punch all those years ago. She also had a tender side to her because she was able to temper his moods and help him stay focused. To hear more, please join us on our special live stream reading of the Space Battle. Our special guest will read it. In the meantime, we will start having guests coming in for interviews to wet your whistle. Stay tuned and let's make some waves.